Hi, in this tutorial we're going to look at how to use the pan gesture. So an example of this is we're going to have an image view on our screen, and if you click and hold the mouse down on the image, or if this was on a device you would tap and hold with your finger and move around. So this is a pan gesture. And this is what our application will do. So to begin with, I'm going to create a new project in Xcode. Okay, so I'm going to create a single view application and click Next. I'm going to name this Pan, and I'm only going to have automatic reference counting selected. I'm going to click Next and Create. I'm going to go right into my interface builder file and begin setting up the interface. So I'm going to start by putting on an image view, and I'll size it down so that we have a little room to move it around for panning. And I'm going to change the mode to aspect fit so that it will show things in proportion. I want to check user interaction enabled and multi-touch check. And now I'm going to need to put an image in here, so I'm just going to drag my image into my supporting files folder and make sure copy items is checked off and click finish. And now I can put that image into my image view. Center that, looks a little better. Okay, next I want to add the pan gesture. So I'm going to scroll down to the gestures section, and here's the pan gesture. I'm going to click and drag it right on top of my image view. And I want to just double check and make sure that it is connected, so I'm just going to right click on the pan gesture and see that it is connected to the image view. Next, I'm going to create our outlets and actions. So in order to do that, I'm going to go into the Assistant Editor, and I'm going to close the utility panel just so that we have a little more room here. Alright, since we're going to be referring to our image view in order to move it from one location to another and for the gesture recognizer to be able to handle it, I'm going to right click and drag from it into the header file. And it's going to be an outlet, and I'm just going to call this image view. Now our pan gesture recognizer by itself, just by dragging it onto our image view, all we're doing is saying that, okay, we've attached the gesture recognizer to this image view, but it doesn't do anything yet. It's not actually moving anything around. So we need to create a method, something to handle this when this gesture is recognized on our image view. So I'm going to go to the pan gesture recognizer under the objects panel, and I'm going to right click and drag into the header file and release, and this is going to be connected to an action. So we have an action, and let's call this handle pan, and then we'll click connect. So we have a pan gesture recognizer that has been applied to our image view, and we are connecting the pan gesture recognizer to this action. Now we need to modify this action a little bit to specify that the information that's being sent with sender is that this is a UI gesture recognizer that's being sent with the sender. And I'll need to make sure that I modify this in my implementation file, because when we click and drag to create this action, it automatically creates the structure for it in the implementation file. So I think we have everything set up in here right now, so I'm going to go to the implementation file. I'm going to come down here, and where our action is set up, I'm just going to replace this with what I copied from over here. Get rid of that semicolon. And to make this easier to see in the video, I'm going to move this method up to the top of the list of our methods. Now, just to do a quick test to see if the pan gesture is being recognized, I'm going to do an NS log statement, and let's just say panning. So now we should be able to test this and just be able to see if it recognizes that we're applying the pan gesture to that image view. So I'm going to run this in the simulator, and to pan in the simulator, you click and hold the mouse down over something and drag, and you can see that in my output here it says panning as I'm doing that. So it is connected and it is recognizing it. So now we need to do something a little bit more exciting than just printing a log statement. So we'll come in here, and I'm going to paste in some code that will handle the pan gesture, and then we'll review it. Okay, so I have pasted some code in here, and so let's review it. We have a couple of variables that we're initializing. One is CG point, and we're calling it net translation. And translation, when we're looking at panning, we want to look at the translation property of the UI pan gesture recognizer. So in the UI gesture recognizer, there's one called the UI pan gesture recognizer. And that translation looks at how much something has moved from the x-axis and the y-axis. So we're creating a point that is our starting point, and we have CG point translation, which is equal to, we're getting our pan gesture recognizer, we're getting the information from our UI image view, and we're getting the translation. So if I click here, translation in view, we can see in the quick help it says it is the translation of the pan gesture in the coordinate system. So it's taking our image view and it's recognizing how much it's being moved from one point to another. So it's translating it in the view. And now we're telling it to change the view based on the position of how much the translation has changed on the x-axis and the y-axis. Remember, CG affine transform is responsible for keeping track of the x and y values for how much something has moved. And since this isn't one quick gesture like a tap, we have to listen for or check to see when the gesture has ended. So we have this if statement, if sender.state is equal to UI gesture recognizer state ended. So it's looking to see when the recognizer stops recognizing that gesture and basically drops the image at the x and y coordinates to where the gesture ended. So let's try this in the simulator. Right, and if I click and hold my mouse down on it and start to drag the mouse, my image pans along with it. So that is a look at how to implement a pan gesture recognizer.